Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of At War, the podcast by the Conflict Law Center. Today, I am very, very happy to have with us Dr. Saadia Zahoor, who is a policy expert in non-traditional security at the Strategic Policy Planning Cell at the National Security Division, and also our future ISI chief. Thank you so much for being here today. So I wanted to start by asking you, we are conducting this podcast straight after our Women in Security Roundtable. So do you think that it is important to have more women work in this field? I know we were just having a bit of a to and fro about the lack of looking at this from a gender lens. But in Pakistan, what perspectives do you think that women can bring to the table which are different from what men can bring?
Thank you, Aisha, for having me. Well, I think during the roundtable and generally also I recognize that it's not about the gender alone, but if you're having women from diverse societies, only then they will bring something new to the table.
Yeah.
So if I am from Islamabad and there's a male colleague who has a similar upbringing, similar sort of situation at home and everything, I will probably agree with them more and think like them more than in comparison to a female colleague coming from Balochistan or let's say Sindh. And unless you have that diversity in not only in terms of your gender but also in the backgrounds, only then you will have women with the different perspectives. Because it's the background or their situation or upbringing that brings the difference. So for example, not talking about the national security, but we work so much on IHL, international humanitarian law, and we have worked so much with the people in Lahore, Karachi and Islamabad. How people of Karachi think about IHL and how the people in Lahore and Islamabad see IHL.
Really?
So because they have been through, people in Karachi have been through this urban violence,
Yeah.
so they can relate to those issues. And now imagine that when you are teaching somebody in Peshawar or from your former FATA areas or Balochistan, now they have a different perspective, and they think about situations that they have faced, and they understand what non-state actors and the power they can have over the area, and so my point is that when you come from a different background, a particular background, that gives you certain sort of perspective into issues. So gender obviously is just because I am a female doesn't mean that I understand everything that women go through across Pakistan or across the world. But having said that, these national security institutions are so underrepresented in terms of gender. And now we're talking about the female, but the national security also talk about the transgenders and their representation and making sure that they have equal opportunities at workplace and the safety and security both in private and public life. But right now we're talking about women. We have seen that they're in periphery of national security, whether the think tanks or strategic communities, you have more females. But women in the government sector, in the military and intelligence, especially at the higher level and policy making level and decision making level, you have far few women. And again, that's more of a structural issue. Because obviously less women going to school, less opportunities for them to have higher education, and that's why probably you will see less women in all the profession, and the women who are getting education, they get education in a specific areas. For example, in Pakistan, women are considered to be far more safer professional prospects if they are, or even if the personal prospects if they are doctors, for example, or and a lot of women want to teach at the primary level or the kindergarten because that gives them the flexibility to be at home or pursue their other interests. Not every female is interested in doing 9 to 5 or 9 to 9. So and then there are professions which are more established, like a legal profession, for example, and you see a lot of women not from like last 10-20 years, but women are in the legal profession in subcontinent even before the independence. Unfortunately or fortunately, unfortunately, in national security paradigm, the career path is not very clear. So you don't know what you can be. So you made this joke about me being the ISI chief in future. So because we cannot think of where can this lead me to? For example, today I'm a policy expert. Tomorrow, can I be an NSA? Will there ever be a female NSA in Pakistan? Will I ever be an intelligence chief? Will the civilian ever be an intelligence chief? And that to a female? But what about the female military official reaching that level? These are the questions that, ask. And because we don't have clear answers to that, we tend to have lesser women because they don't know where they'll end up. Sorry, but I want to add one more thing. It's also people don't understand what national security is, because if you think about national security in a very, very military sense, a very intelligence sense, then women think differently. And as you mentioned, and there's a study in America for the young girls where they have asked them how they explain national security, and they said Men in Black. Because that was the influence of the movie influence and the drama influence, and people think that intelligence is all about men and doing operations and
whereas so many women in history have been spies, and they're much better.
And again,
at
in the subcontinent, we have a history of female spies within subcontinent, and even in Islamic history, and but women don't know what it, and to be honest, generally when you meet younger people, they don't know what it entails to live in national security. So for example, I am not an intelligence person. I'm not working on the military intelligence or civilian intelligence. I'm working on international law. So for example, now that national security is so wide, that we'll probably talk about it later, but if you are let's say a good coder, you're a cyber security expert, you are needed in the national security, and you can contribute into that. And for example, if you're a climate expert or you work on a climate security, you are needed in national security. So women are needed, but it's how you explain national security and how you teach your younger generation or inspire them to see national security in a wider perspective.
Yeah, and I think that is very important. So when I was organizing or telling everyone I was going to organize this roundtable, everyone was like, but this is exactly what you have criticized for years, which is like gendering of every single thing. And I find it very annoying, especially when we're, a question I was asked was, what about the women who are affected in Kashmir? And I'm like, women are affected in Kashmir. There's sexual violence, there's all of that stuff. Mainly it is against men and boys. Like the Papa 2 torture centers, they are young boys often who are tortured and sexually tortured as well. Men are disappeared, men are killed in war. So when we're looking at the impact of women in war, like even the impact of women in drone strikes, I'm like, but the men are the ones who die. Like, did they die though, is my question to what happens to men. And also, so I dislike that, and I dislike the fact that women are viewed as this homogenous entity, which is that they're all the same, they're all going to have the same opinions. I have no idea what it's like to be a poor woman in Pakistan. I have no idea. I carry my privilege in every probably fiber you can read class in this country the way you can't read it anywhere else. And the issue is that I should not be speaking for women in Pakistan, right? That diversity of opinion. And exactly like you said, a man educated the same as me, I'm going to parrot the same opinions he is. But how do you get that diversity? And I'm like, I want to, like, how can we start to do that? Can we start to do that through a gender lens? And I'm like, maybe, let's see if we can do that. But especially in terms of national security, the issue with women in national security is that they become very militaristic. There's something about that power. And I do think that women are inherently more narcissistic than men, so I worry about them more in those terms. So it is the trappings of power which are the issue. And so how do we defeat that with this idea of women being nurturing and diplomatic and stuff, which I think is there until you get to that point. So I'm like, maybe let's work on it until you get to that height. I don't know.
Aisha, I was so my background is like really within international law. I have worked on different aspects, and for the longest time I worked on international humanitarian law and taught people about peace and proportionality and distinction and everything. And in the last 4 years, probably I have little less humanitarian in my approach. But do I don't care about women and children anymore, or vulnerable communities, or mass killings or genocide? No, absolutely not. But what I do understand is that, well, you have to defend your country. And if somebody will attack, you have to defend your country and protect your country. And that is something that is a basic lesson of international law. You have to protect your sovereignty and territorial integrity. So if that's through the diplomacy, if through negotiation, for peaceful methods, I'm all for it. But if it comes to other means, you have to prepare for that.
And I think that is, I mean, maybe it's not right to call it the trappings of power.
It's just the requirement of the job. Yeah, right. And the job. Yeah. When I'm teaching, there's no need for me to think how you can make your military more stronger, or what type of weapons are more appropriate for a particular operation. That's not my job as an academic. And I can work more, think about more of as an advocate and activist, thinking about peace and prosperity. I still talk about that. What is nobody knows it better than a soldier that what can do, because that they are on the front line and they understand that. But the only difference is that when you are an academic or an advocate or activist, you think that you believe in peace, and the opponent will believe in peace as well. But and I'm not talking about a particular country or a region or situation. I'm just saying generally, you can think about peace, you can work towards peace, but you have to have an equal partner who is willing to talk about peace.
Yes.
So when I'm in that situation, when I am that decision maker, when I'm that policy maker, or I'm not, but if I can influence that policy maker, and I come to that position, and if I am a decision maker, I still understand the importance of peace. I will still understand the importance of international humanitarian law, of not using weapons of mass destruction. But if my enemy forced me to do stuff that I have to protect my country, I will do that. Will I still be an aggressor? I would never like to be aggressor. Whether I'm working as an academic, I'm a researcher, I'm an international organization, or even in the government. But I think it's just the need of it's just not a gender thing. It's not the power thing. It's just the requirement of job. It's about the requirement of the job.
And you think that you wouldn't react in any way differently to a man when the need of the hour comes?
I think I've told you this before, even we started this. Whenever I have an issue in front of me, I think more as an international law expert. Okay. Whether UN Security Council resolutions against this, for this, is there a way in international law to justify this, or to defend this? Because I'm trained that way. So it is more of the lens is my training as an international lawyer or a student of international law, but not as a... so, for example, if you have to negotiate a treaty with a country, gender is not an important element there. What will be good for my country, in my understanding, at that given point in time and in those circumstances? Remember that they were not working in ideal situation. We have this policy constraints, and it's not just that Pakistan is going through a particular phase. Everywhere in the world, you have certain constraints that you have to operate within that. So in the given situation, with the given resources, with the given whatever knowledge you have, you will try to do the best for your country. And I don't think so. I will think as a female, but I tell you, when I do think as a female, for example, when I'm talking about data protection laws, and I remember I made those interventions on behalf of my office, and the last point I added was, which was my personal point, that make sure that the language of the law is gender neutral. Okay. So that's probably that's the point that only a female can make. But then I know so many lawyers, male lawyers, who would say the same thing given the opportunity. But those are things that and for example, I would still always call out people if they have a Manel. When I work within national security, if there is anything that we are organizing or we are going to, I will tell them, I will just request everybody that, have a woman, and not just as a not just as a filler, when I'm invited to the panels, and when I'm just the only female, and I'm the only female, then I always have this thought, maybe I'm just the filler, I'm just the token representation of the female, and not because I'm good enough to be part of that panel. That is those type of conversations that I have, and that has nothing to do with national security. Even when I worked in other places, or if I will work in other places in the future, I will do the same.
So I find that tokenistic representation of women very annoying.
Same.
We at one point we hired IHL fellows, and we were hiring 4, and I was just like, okay, we're gonna have 2 guys, 2 girls, done, right? Even before the interview stage, hadn't seen their applications, hadn't seen their CVs. I was like, okay, we're gonna make this balanced. In the end, I hired 4 guys. And so the director was like, could you not find a woman to hire? And I was like, no, I couldn't find a woman to hire. The women came and talked about they were very good. They came and talked about human rights. I was like, I cannot hire you as an IETL fellow if you're not interested in my subject. The men came, they would talk about Palestine. They would talk about, oh, I see Kashmir on the news. I don't know what the law is that applies. I want to know this, Russia, Ukraine. I was like, at the minimum, you need to be interested in my subject. If you're not, even if you are, like, Pulitzer Prize winner, I can't hire you. It doesn't make any sense to me. And so the idea of like, okay, I oppose Manels, I'm like, but if there isn't a woman, there isn't a woman. Even when I'm doing podcasts, like I was saying this to you, I ask so many women, they don't come on. And so I'm like, I'm left interviewing men, and people are making comments about, oh, you only interview these like elite men from these social circles. And I'm like, they agreed to come on. They agreed to come on. So what am I meant to do? Just sit here and wait for a woman to say yes? Like, no, that's not how it's gonna happen, right?
Sorry, Aisha, I agree with everything you said, but earlier in the roundtable, they have a discussion about Justice Aisha.
Yeah.
And the question about the competence and everything is fair. When when you aspire to be at a position, people will go back and check your degrees and universities and your thesis and your research opinions and everything. Recently, I've seen on Twitter about her divorce. Her personal life, and that's the problem. When you are so when I come into podcast, my worry is not how I'm speaking, because I know that what I'm saying, I have a reason to say that. Might be wrong, but I have a reason to. If you will ask me, if you ask for the clarification, I have the reason why I'm saying this. But if you will tell me that I'm looking ugly, I'm fat, I'm dark, I have spots on my face, and I've been through that. Where I've been in a job position, the females have been telling me, why don't you go to a dermatologist, because you can have do something about this. So that's that. My personal fear always is that, and not because of what I'm about to say. Because if I work in a particular or worked on a particular subject for a longer time, I have opinion and based on research and my understanding of subject. But I cannot control by how people will think about or say about how I look. And do I care?
You have to not care.
Though, I always believe that you have to reach that position, where these things don't matter. But is it good to read about those things? Absolutely not. So when you have this podcast where other people have, this man has or women has said good or bad and everything, and then this or you're in a panel and then somebody said, this particular lady is so fat or anything, so that's not the commentary that I want. I want to be I'm more vocal in when I'm amongst friend or in a protected environment where I can speak and I understand people, what they will focus on what I'm saying and not how I'm looking. But so for example, when you talk about the male privilege coming from just as Aisha come from the same background, but we haven't seen that sort of personalized attack on let's say on the male figures like you always have seen on women, and starting from the Fatma Jinnah to Benazir Bhutto to everybody. So the females have that additional burden, and you cannot, but that's not a security issue, that's not a but that's a more of a cultural issue in the subcontinent, and obviously I want if people are listening to me, I don't want them not to think about these things, but you cannot say that those things don't affect me, and hence or don't affect anybody. Anybody who listen to if there are things that you can tell me that you say like you have the people come and critique me about I speak too fast. I understand. I know that. Can I do anything about it? I should, but I know. Okay. But that has to be a constructive criticism, and males have this privilege where people will not talk about. Nobody will tell your male guests that they are fat or they are too dark or
That's true. I'm trying to think about it in the context of when I see celebrities talking about how they get hateful comments on Instagram or Twitter and stuff, and I'm like, but you have the virtue of being in that position means that you will hear that kind of stuff, right? If you've got to the point where you're invited for a podcast or you're invited to speak, it will have that negative impact, and totally it's worse for women. Totally it's worse for women because they're told to aspire to
look a certain
cookie
way.
cutter image type thing. But I'm like, isn't that something that you have to be thick-skinned enough about? Because there are so many, and I'm sure you get a lot of good comments as well, right? So like your brain like filters out those and focuses on the negative, and I'm like, but the way you're being treated in accordance with your expertise and your competence is so much more important.
Well, so see, when you have to do it, you have to do it, right?
Yeah.
But if you have given a choice, I would probably say no.
Okay.
So because if I am forced to do something and I still get all those comments, and it's part of the job.
Yeah.
But if I have given a choice, I can avoid it, I will avoid it.
Okay.
So but I would want to tell you this is that this is not a public thing. The discrimination, how you look is real. I will always remember this. I was working on this project and I worked so much, and everybody was like, you did great things and everything. And then there was a day when this project was to be shared with the government, and government was supposed to announce that. And I was teaching at a university, and we were deciding who will represent the university. Obviously, I was supposed to go because I worked on that. And then my HOD said, "Usko bhi bula lo. Koi khoobsurat bhi to hona chahiye."
Oh God.
And it doesn't matter to me, but did I not register that?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it affected me and I cried. No, I didn't. But I remember.
Right. Yes.
And so the point is that why would I? And I don't care if they're in front of me. I will just probably kick them, but the point is that when the anonymity of the internet gives them more power to say stuff, and I'm not saying, but I'm saying this is why probably women are not willing to come on podcasts and talk about the subject that they teach.
I hadn't thought about that.
And if they teach a classroom full of men and women, and without discrimination, they can do it on the podcast as well. But it's just that the anonymity will give people power to talk about the way they look rather than what they are saying. So I mean, so we are having this conversation, and people will think this is a privileged conversation. These are not the true representation of the problems that women are facing every day. So the point is that people will criticize anyways. So that's not a problem. But as long as their criticism is constructive or coming from a particular point of view, but nobody has a right to. See, I'm not a celebrity. I'm not a filmmaker, personality or a drama personality. I am not up for that sort of criticism. I haven't put myself out there to be judged on my looks or
Do you? I agree with that, and I understand what you're saying. Right now, we are a digital world, right? So, in order for people to hear what Saadia Zahoor has to say, and if you need to be on a podcast, or if you need to be like out there speaking about it, is that not the price you're willing to pay?
Well, I remember the first podcast I recorded with Aves, and we were talking, and then he started like turning on the lights and everything. I was like, "Why you're doing this?" He said, "We have to record it." I thought we said audio recording.
Okay.
And I was like, because before that, I think there were a couple of podcasts, but for some reason, I only heard the audio version of it, and I thought it's only audio version. So I was like literally taken back that I'm not willing to be part of this, on the camera. It's just that. So I want to tell you something. So if you tell me that if you tell me that I'm ugly or I'm fat or anything, I will not be hurt, but I will hate you, and I will lose a good person forever, who's otherwise a talented person. So you understand what I'm saying? So I have you can't operate in isolation. And I don't know. By the way, I always, if you ask me the advice on the national security, you cannot have too many barriers. You need to collaborate with people a lot. So I'm when I'm talking about this, I'm not talking about me personally. I'm quite thick-skinned. I'm more vocal. I'm more. I can call out people publicly. So I don't come from that place where I'm suffering or anything. I'm crying or anything. But what I'm saying is that even I think twice before putting myself out there in public. So but I'm answering to you why women don't come. It's just not that they're not competent or they're not willing to talk. It's because the pressures are additional pressures. So a male just have to like come to your show, wash their face and come there. Probably other women have to go for a blow dry and because they're expected to look in a certain way. So that's the problem, and that's everyday problem.
But so all of this just actually takes me back to the point that how can it not have an impact on the way you look at things? Because so for instance, when we go back to, I agree class is more important. I actually think class is the only important thing. I don't think that I haven't felt like my gender has stopped me. I actually feel like probably I've gotten better at things because of being a woman, especially in Pakistan, because there's this era of correctness than like any other otherwise. But I do feel like there are certain things which are so inherent to me that I'm like, being a Muslim is one, right? All of like everything for me is within the four corners of being a Muslim, and Islam tells me exactly what rules to do, what rules to not do. Don't do this, don't do that. And I like rules. I like having my life ordered by rules. I feel like it's incredibly important for me. I cannot look at something, even the national security issue that you're talking about, right? Look at that purely from but what will my conscience say if I have killed a lot of people, if I have been the one to pull that trigger? Similarly, I feel like even if it's lower down there than everyone says, which I agree with, is not being a woman also part of that?
Well, what I'm saying is that, it is, but for example, let's take somebody who, if I was not Saadia and Asad and everything else was the same, I would probably still be worried about things that I'm worried about.
Okay.
Maybe a little less about looks, because people will not comment on my looks. People will not discriminate on the basis of my looks. But see, my discrimination is so. For example, even males who look a certain way are discriminated against. So darker people in this country, people with the darker, I don't want to get cancelled, but anybody who has like not fair probably will be discriminated, or so the discrimination is not that they will take the job away, or but those small things where you, for example, if you are in the meeting, we will have a prominent position, people will ask your opinion, madam aap bataएं. So madam who's more prim and proper will have a better opportunity to be given the opportunity to be talked about. So that's the but then that's true for males also. So and you see males, and for example, I will joke about we always have this I don't know whether it can go through, but we also talk about Jamal, who has this like sharp suits, and he's always like cuffs and everything, but he looks the part. And well, it comes with a job. I mean, and then probably, and the people think, and I know for a fact, because I have, I don't know when talking about this. But I know people discriminate against men also if they don't look a certain way. So these things are not gender specific.
They're not.
They are more for women. For sure, they are more for women. But and the intensity might be different. I mean, just imagine this, that we have amazingly intelligent women and women coming from Sindh and Balochistan and Gilgit-Baltistan, and they're amazing people and amazing intellect, but they have a certain accent, and or they speak in a certain way, or they for example, we have or they talk about particular issues which are not mainstream issues, and people get annoyed. So and this is for men and women both. Women might have more issues because they are raised in a certain way in the country. Certain communities raise women in a certain way, and so they are more underconfident than their male counterparts. But again, nobody wants to have that sort of discussion about the way they look, or other things, or what type of car they drive or something, all of these things, which does affect, which is you have that, it subconsciously is there. And I cannot deny that it's a factor that
I think also I mean, we've all read the articles going around about the legal fraternity and everything, and the nepotism, and I think it is really difficult. We're both lawyers, so we both come from an international background. what is really difficult is coming here and seeing women in law panels, and you're like, you're all the nieces or daughters of judges or of owners of like the biggest law firms in the country. How dare you sit there and talk to people about women and tell them to work hard? No, you're not allowed. I'm sorry, no one should have allowed you to sit there and talk about that. And we have so few women actually that I'm like, oh, you've risen up the ranks. And I feel like maybe Pakistan was more socially mobile before, because people used to have these stories about, oh, I used to bike to this office and then I used to sleep there, and I worked my way up to become this, that. Those are still, they were rare, but it still happened. And now it's like the importance of who you know, how you know them even, and how to get by. It's so horrible in a country like this. And yet at the same time, the kids who don't have that, the education system lets them down so badly that it is incredibly hard to hire them. Yeah. It is incredibly difficult to hire them. And even if you really want to, how much, and this is something that it goes down to, how much more time are you willing to accept on your workload? Yeah. To mentor and to train people up? Yeah. Because I feel like it's a very nice idea to have in principle. Am I willing to sit there for 3 extra hours, edit this person's work in the hope that 3 years down the line they'll be better? I don't know. Actually, I don't know. If someone was, and they have to be that. They have to be then exceptional. If they're coming to me from Punjab University, any of the local universities, they have to be, because I know that it's going to take, I know that what they had to do to get there is much more, and they're going to be willing to work that much harder, but it's going to take me longer.
So
it's a sad reality.
Yeah. So the other day I was talking to my colleague and I said, what was your expectation when you first met me? And I said, don't lie, you didn't expect anything from me because I was a local graduate.
Right.
And he laughed, and I said, like, yeah, that's the point. When you so that's also an advantage. So you don't expect me to do well.
Yeah.
And if I just sort of show a bit of spark, you will accept me more willingly, because I'm surpassing your expectation anyways.
Yeah.
So there's a but that's the point, Aisha. I think whether it's national security, whether it's international law, legal fraternity, the legal issues that we see every day, it goes back to, everything boils down to the legal or education system. See, even the gender representation, earlier in the roundtable, I shared those statistics that 2 million more girl children are outside the schools, and they're not enrolled. So that's the discrimination that from the starting point. So, you have less women. And then the quality of education. So, I think the former finance minister, Ismail, have talked about this so much that, it's just the quality of education. And that's, you are absolutely right. For example, if you're well educated, if you have a better language skills and better research skills and ethical skills, you will do the same work far more faster and quicker than, your...
and it's like my mom always says that she went to the village school, and so she was like, we literally used to sit underneath the tree, but our teachers were amazing. They gave us this love of learning. And I'm like, I don't know if you're a good case study, because I feel like you had that love of learning, and you would have had that wherever you went, right? So like the ones who make it out of that village school are probably not a good barometer of success in terms of that.
So I want to tell you this, that that's the thing for everybody who's successful despite any sort of disadvantage to say. But see, regardless, for example, you have been to Oxford, right? But if you stop reading after that,
Exactly.
So, see, learning and skills are something that you can learn, and see with technological advancements, things are changing so fast that maybe we have a different sort of skill set to begin with, but if you keep on investing on yourself, and keep on learning, and you have that sort of curiosity about stuff,
and the quick. I feel like I don't want to speak too much about this social media generation, but I really think it's ruined everyone's brains, because it's made them incredibly narcissistic, and also no attention span and a desire for immediate success. And I'm like, what has TikTok done to y'all? And I remember being a kid and like little things. You had to, if you were watching a TV show, you had to sit through 5 minutes of adverts. Right? You'd learn boredom, you learn delayed gratification, you learn all of these things that later on you can be like, okay, you feel different somehow. this next generation feels very different to me, to the point that I'm like, what happened? And I'm like, this is it. Instant gratification, instant dopamine hits. And yet, like, your mental health is all down here. You're not doing anything really. And yet you're very entitled. You want the moon. Why are you wanting the moon at this stage? Who told you would get it?
No,
Who told you this?
That's the point, Aisha. Regardless of your circumstances,
Yeah.
your privileges, everybody has to work hard. So, for example, you went to a particular schools. You have been to, you have an A-level student rather than FSC student. You have been to a good local university or international university. You have these opportunities where you have the work with the best of the world, regardless of your circumstances.
Yeah.
And I'm not taking away that, all these things do help, but if somebody who has all these things and still not working hard, I remember this one particular young kid who'd been to Harvard, and he said, I don't read books. I just go and find their summaries on Wikipedia. And that was the last time I think I talked to him. Because if all the education has taught you this, that you don't read books and just read the summary so that you can have hold a social conversation, that's the problem. So in comparison, if there is a kid who has been to, let's say, a local university, a law school, and has the appetite to read, and might not be the best in terms of vocabulary and language skills, but has his ideas and has this analytical skills, I will still hire him, because and see, if you read good, garbage in, garbage out, if you read best of the so with the media, social media, now you can interact with the best of scholars in the world. You can ask them for their article which are otherwise hidden by the paywall.
You could.
So there are opportunities as well. So everything with the LinkedIn or social media, everything, they have given us opportunities as well. But the point is
expensive, and they shouldn't be. And like, you go and you're just like, do I want to spend 3,000 rupees on this book?
But that sort of when I was starting as my first job as a teacher, I joined the university, and I remember my supervisor, my LLM supervisor, said to me that the best thing is always to have your own community. And that's something that has helped me in my work in national security as well. So as an academic, you have like 5 months, 6 months, in a year to write an article, to have a peer review and everything. But you don't have, but when you are in the national security, any sort of national security job, you don't have time. There are things which are urgent, and you have to write and give input. You need that skill, but you need the support also. So you have that community. So and the community teaches you a lot. So for example, if you are really concerned about what I'm doing, you will probably tell me, never do this like this, and you improve that. And if I'm smart enough, I will just pick that from there. So you have, as I say, there's shared resources, there's a shared knowledge also. So if I cannot read a book, but I know somebody who has read that book, or probably I know that he would have read this book, I will call them and ask them to give me the feedback, input, because I don't have time right now to read that book. Right.
And those networks is so much more with men than women, really.
Absolutely. I remember this there's a vice chancellor of the Fatima Jinnah University. She once said that when there are vice chancellors group, and whenever the HSC sends us a notification, a male vice chancellor will pick up the call and call the other vice chancellor and say, iska kya matlab hai, kya karna hai, what will be our strategy. And the female will be so uptight, they will never call another colleague, male on female. And she said that that's a problem, and always pick up the call and ask people, and talk to people. And you probably it's a trial and error. So for example, as an academic, I'm in a harshest critic of RSIL, but so this Henry Kissinger famously said that university politics is vicious because the stakes are so low. But when it comes to national security, you cannot be petty.
Right.
So if I know that Aisha has that skill and she's the best person to do this, and so I have to call you, regardless of my personal equation with you. And then the ability to see that, for example, Saadia has this problem but this strength, and I can ignore this right now and I can work on this. So in my personal life, I'm very petty. and I'm very, revengeful probably. But when it comes to my work,
spite is the biggest motivator.
Yeah, but when it comes to work, I will call anybody who I think can contribute. So you cannot hold this against people, because it's not about you. This is not about your job. This is about a country.
Yeah.
So, but regardless of the national security, when I was
everything in Pakistan functions on personal enmities and friendships. Like nobody thinks like this.
So no,
I don't even know if I think like this. To be honest, I'm so personal. Everything is personal to me.
No, but I tell you why you can't take it as a person, at a personal capacity. I mean, my only point is that if I know that somebody is a known harasser, the harassment charges have been proven against them, I would try to keep my distance.
Yeah.
Other than that, even when I talk to people who I would not listen to for a moment in my personal capacity, but because you have to be inclusive. See, the national security, that's a problem, Aisha. If once you know that your opinion matters to national security, you will give me your best, right? Because because unlike other jobs that you do, public service has this advantage that you are doing work for. See, this is very underpaid in comparison to, let's say, working in a top-notch corporate firm or
definitely.
So, but you have to bring back that prestige, and prestige comes from the quality of work and the importance of that work.
Yeah.
And to make my work important and good enough, I need to have the best of the opinion of everybody. I have to listen to, for example, Kashmir. I think everybody thinks that Kashmir is some issue that is work or isolation. The policy is work or isolation. But I know for a fact that I was telling this to, I just mentioned this in a roundtable a few days back. I said, anybody who had anything to do with international law, if they were even a prominent student, I called them, I made them part of the discussion, and regardless of their ideas, they were incorporated. And then, but they're hashed later on, whether they're making sense or not. But everybody got anybody, and then again, for sure, I have a community that I went outside. I asked people to suggest names and work. But obviously, I'm not saying that I have the reach. I work in so many diverse fields that I have a lot of connections. But still, there might be some people I've missed. I'm not saying that but anybody who, in my opinion, my knowledge or the knowledge of my circle was important enough, or has the say, or has worked on Kashmir, has been contacted, so the point is that you need to have that community to support your work, and then to support their work also. So it's a two-way street. I cannot keep on asking people for help and then don't give them any support. So because the government also have this unique perspective or unique insight onto events, and you share if given that it's allowed in public domain. But the point is that unless you have the good quality education, which is important, and for that you cannot rely on foreign universities. You have to make sure that your local schools, law schools, and schools generally are well equipped. And when you're quoting your mother's example, it's never about so we are so brick and mortar nation that we have to have a huge building. And HSC have these rules that you have this much of acre of land and this much of students. So what is important is your faculty.
Exactly.
And your students who are willing to study, and you have to have some criteria, some standards of education. See, if you have a Oxford professor teaching somebody who doesn't even understand the language, you will never have a quality conversation. So when people talk about there's a friend of mine who has been to LUMS and has now and got his degree from Europe, and now is teaching in a public sector university. And I said people don't want to read. So like, you have been to this bubble of Pakistani elite where they never know. Because when somebody has 45% of marks in FSC and they are now in the university, they are not there to, put an extra hard work to read 100 pages or 50 pages. So the quality of education has to improve. And then this, so that sort of community, whether it's national security, strategic community, international relations, or international law, I for a fact that I was the only person working in an international law. I never have resources or to hire people or anything, or to have other sort of support. So the community has helped. Whether they are corporate lawyers, whether they're top-notch people who work on treaties or you name anything, people have been there and they supported our work, and hence we were able to contribute, because it's not possible. Because see, state will hire, like, let's say 10 lawyers and 15 lawyers, but you need more people, so imagine there are 100 lawyers in State Department, probably, and there are 300 people in national security.
That's the thing.
And that,
and you're
many of them are
them.
So if you want to even put a fight or put a face in a so you need a support, and government will not hire tens and thousands of people, and in fact they need to reduce the size of the government. But then comes the community. But the community then needs, if you are supporting my work, what will you want if not remuneration?
That's
that's a system that has to be developed. But the quality 100%. Of education, the support of the people, when you are working, I should support you, and ultimately that opens a way. And that's why the instant gratification, money is important. Skills are far more important. Again, this comes from a place of privilege. I'm saying if you have to feed 5 children or siblings or parents, obviously you will have a different consideration. But whenever you have an opportunity, so even today, I'm enrolled in a language class. I'm enrolled in a professional course, and competitive professional courses, not those open, courses, which are still great if you're doing that. You're building your skill. It's not because I'm forced to do that, but because I want to do that. Because whatever I'm doing, I have to take a next step professionally. And it's doesn't mean that I have to find another job or something. But if you want, keep on improving, but that's important. And that's why.
And sometimes that does mean foregoing things. In the favor of that down the line.
So for example, if you are not privileged enough to have your undergrad from Oxford or let's say Harvard, but if you get an opportunity to your LLM, from you apply for scholarships, now that you have a certain amount of knowledge and know-how, so whatever you have, for example, you cannot still not afford a LLM, probably you can afford a executive course or something, and maybe when you're working, apply for scholarships, and disadvantages are there, but is there a way out? Yes, there's a way out. Is it available to everybody? No. You'll all, even the scholarships and everything, it's but when you talk about your mother is a great example. Not you can't see the isolation. That is how people progress. When you tea shows its true color in boiling water, the famously, like when you are forced to do something. And remember, when you come from, sometimes there's a burden of expectations, and I'm always very happy that nobody expects anything from me, my parents and anybody. So I think that gives me a lot of space for experimentation and maneuvering. So some things might work, you never know, and you can aspire for bigger things. They might never work, but what's bad about dreaming big?
Exactly.
And working towards that. I don't
That's
think
why you're going
the
to be the
privilege.
future ISI chief. That's a really great note to end it on. Thank you so much for joining us today. I think that this was a very candid and very nice discussion. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope you'll tune in for future episodes.